You're either learning or winning. Sometimes you have to learn in order to win.
Hey guys, it's Mindy Linscomb here, your host of the Something New Show, where we like to learn how to live a life worth celebrating. And today, joining me in the studio, actually from my hometown, are my dear friends Scott and Bethany Palmer. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, so great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
And it's the first time seeing the studio, even though you guys, we live in and we really work and play side by side here in town. And so I just was so glad to have you up here and see what we've been doing in the studio.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Beautiful.
Across the street from where you guys have your offices, right?
About 150 yards.
I know. I was going to say we could walk to where you work every day, which I love that.
So cool.
And I want to tell people how we met. We met years ago, and actually we have two different stories on how we have our first memories together, but it's been many, many years. It was actually when Jordan and I were newlyweds was my first memory. And we were teaching a class at our church for like newlywed couples. And really, we weren't really teaching. We were hosting, longer married people to teach us how to be married. And you guys had just written a book. Yes. What was the name of that book?
Sense and Sensibility, How Couples Can Agree About Money.
Ooh, we can hit that in a little bit because couples usually don't agree about money.
That's right.
But then also a really personal part of our journey together is we really bonded over cancer, which is a terrible way to bond. But I always say it's the club nobody wants to be a part of. However, it's the one that really makes you like heart knitted together forever.
Absolutely.
So I remember you guys coming over to our house right after Brody was home from the hospital. We had just gone through like 60 days of intense treatment. And while we were in the hospital, you took our dog. Do you remember that?
Oh, totally.
Okay, so we had this little dog. Her name was Ruby, and she actually had the same color hair as you. She was beautiful. Like that, nobody has that color hair. They're so beautiful and rare. And I just I love that color. And she had a busted kneecap, I think, and had to have surgery. And you guys knew we were going through a tough time. You didn't even know us. You took our dog. You paid for the surgery, and then they nursed her back to health with her boys for like months.
Yes.
And I just remember going like, who are these people? They're the nicest people ever.
It was an honor.
And
really.
then you came over to our house. Do you remember that night? You came over to our house?
Totally.
It's such a crazy special memory to me because we were actually part of the group, I think from actually y'all's Bible study or small group. And we came to your house and just were like getting it all prepped. You guys were a little busy for yard work. And I remember my oldest son, someone said they're going to have to put the dog down because they just can't take this on right now. And he's got this terrible hip and they have to have surgery. And on the way home, my son he was dead-eyeing me. And
Oh
Cole's
my gosh.
Dad, we're going to take care of that dog and we're going to get the surgery done. I said, great. And we went and picked up the dog a couple days later and took his surgery. And it was a great experience because, it was you're always blessed the most when you're blessing other people. And we were so blessed by having Ruby at the house, and what a great experience for my boys to say, hey, this is how things are supposed to work like this. This is how family takes care of family. So for me, it's a super special memory.
You're going to make me cry because I can imagine your boys when they were little, and I could just imagine them looking at you saying, Dad, we got to help. They've always been others centered. And then, you guys, which I'll read your bio here in just a minute, but you guys have been close to the cancer journey.
Yes.
And so, you just get it. You just get it. The fact that there's nothing else we can do at that time, right? We're impatient, can't get home. We had a newborn too.
Right.
I mean, we were just like stacked with all the things, right? And then just to teach your kids at such an early age, like, hey, let's look out and see how we can be a helper. I love how Mr. Rogers is always like, look for the helpers in any tragedy. He's like, look for the helpers. And he teaches kids to look for helpers. And I think that's what you guys did. You taught your kids.
Well, I went through breast cancer myself, stage 3, and we had so many people bring meals and help us, and it meant so much to us when you're going through a trying time. And I have to say, we were not used to accepting help from people. It wasn't kind of our natural MO. We were kind of like, well, we can do this, we can do everything kind of thing. But when you come to a time like that in your life, it's like you are willing to finally accept some help, and then you get it. And it just touches your life in such an amazing way. We had over 88 meals delivered to our home from people all over the city, people we didn't even know.
Yeah.
And so when you're going through a tough time or you see other people going through a tough time, just say, okay, I'm going to help. I'm going to reach out, whatever I can do. And it just ends up, you think you're helping them, but it ends up touching you more.
Well, and especially if you can bring your kids into it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So I want to just highlight the fact that advice you're giving right now to our listeners is the same advice you gave us when we came home from the hospital. I was in my master bedroom with Jordan holding the newborn baby, and he's like, the Palmers are here. I still remember coming out and being like, thanks for taking my dog. You saved her life, and you're like, we're good. We're going to keep a little longer, because she was still in her cone and everything. And we were back and forth from the hospital. But you said, can you just say yes? And Jordan and I looked at each other. We're like, to what? And they're like, to any time someone offers to do something, this season is a yes. Like, you have to say yes. Because, we're always taught to be tough and work hard and always be like, no, we can do it. But you told Jordan that, and he has told so many cancer families that we now get to volunteer with and help. Tons of families. Like, somebody named Scott told me, just say yes in this season. Accept the help, accept the meal, accept the dog. As uncomfortable as that was for us to let some random person take our dog, it was like, what are the options? And I was like, she'll be fine. And you were like, so nice. You're like, what food? I was like, any food. Like, what does she eat? I'm like, I don't know, whatever you want, But even we had someone call us, I remember, at school one day and said, hey, that my son was at school. We were in the hospital, and somebody said, hey, would you be uncomfortable if I took your boys to get a haircut? Because they look like they really need a haircut. And I was embarrassed, that I hadn't even looked up at my other children to see that they needed haircuts. But it was just like a mom trying to be helpful. She goes, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but they really need a haircut. And I was like, thank you so much. And she took my son after school, got him all haircuts, because I was in a hard time. And so I just think when people are in a hard time, that advice you gave us really is so cool, to just humble yourself and be like, you know what? I need help right now. And yes, if you can mow my lawn, yes. And so I think there's a lot of tough, hardworking people that listen to this show, but they might be going through a hard time. And I just want them to hear your advice again. It's like, if you need it and somebody offers it, sometimes it's okay to say yes.
Absolutely.
So let me tell them a little bit about you. I know we jumped right into it, but Bethany is living her dream right now. She's an interior designer and doing an amazing job. And then Scott owns a boutique financial advising company here in town. And for many years, they've been working together. They still share an office, or an office space, maybe different offices, but an office space nearby. And they're an incredibly dynamic couple. You never leave your presence without laughing a little and maybe crying a little, and definitely feeling much better. Like, when you leave that conversation, you're like, I can do anything. I talk to the Palmers, which I love that. They've been entrepreneurs, over 25 years for sure. They've built and sold 3 businesses, which I think that would be an interesting thing to tell people today, if you have any tips too on selling a business, because that's oftentimes where you're like, what's my exit plan? And people don't think about that. They've also made extreme career changes to follow their passion. So we'll end with that, because I definitely want people living their passion. Bethany has survived stage 3 breast cancer. They have 2 adult boy children that I love with a passion. These boys are like nephews to me, and they are playing football right now at the United States Air Force Academy.
Yes.
They're big
Go
dudes.
Falcons.
You should be so proud of them. Yes. Married 25 years and just committed to their faith and their family and just their community. So thank you guys for being here and showing up. Can we start with that first book you wrote? Because at that time of your life, I'm pretty sure you were Fox News money couple, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yes. And you were writing resources for people on how to get along with their money, have common goals with their money. So let's start there.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. We never planned on writing books about how couples can agree about money, but we were approached by a publisher, and they said, would you write a book about money? And we're like, not really. It's kind of boring. There's plenty of books out there about it. And they said, if you did write a book about money, what would it be? So we went away for that weekend and we talked about it, and we were like, you know what? One of the biggest problems is couples don't agree about money. Why is that? What is that all about? And that led us into our journey of actually publishing and writing 3 books, which our most recent one is The 5 Money Personalities, how couples can agree about money. And one of the things that we've realized in that whole journey was how couples are, number 1, attracted to their opposite. Number 2,
isn't that the truth?
The money opposite is 80 to 90% of the time. you are married to your money opposite. And so that was really one of the main reasons why, and as we identified, how can you agree about money if you married your money opposite? And so that's why we developed the 5 money personalities.
And what are some tips if you married your money opposite?
Sure. Well,
discover them.
Yeah.
Figure out what maybe you're high risk, low risk.
Absolutely. Well, you've got basically 5 money personalities, and so you have a saver, spender, security seeker, risk taker, and a flyer.
Maybe say those one more time.
Okay, sorry. I've
those
said about
you just breeze through those. Yeah. So I'm like, okay.
You got a saver.
Save. That's the person.
They're all about it. They're that friend that's like, you're like, oh, hey, cool shoes. And they're like, well, not only are they cool, but I found them at Nordstrom's Rack for $12.99. And
they always tell you that they got a deal on them.
It's always the deal. Then you have the spender, which I'm awesome at. That's definitely my primary, where I just love to spend money. And spenders are funny because we love to give away money.
Very generous.
That's just kind of our passion is spending and giving.
So it's like you spend it on people, you spend it on causes, you spend it on yourself, you spend it on all of it.
Great to have on your nonprofit board. The third is a risk taker, and Bethany is a perfect example. The reason that we've owned 3 companies and sold 3 companies is not because of Scott Palmer. It's because of Bethany Palmer, because she's awesome at it. She's awesome at building these companies, and then she's awesome.
Entrepreneurs of the world.
Yeah, she's awesome at knowing kind of when to get out. What am I missing?
Security seeker.
Security seeker. So security seeker. So that's my secondary money personality. What we find is you have a primary and then a secondary. I'm a security seeker. So I love to spend money, but I will never spend $1 without a plan. I have to know how it fits into the budget, how it affects our long-term game. And then the last is flyer. I think my mom is a perfect example of a flyer. A flyer is somebody that just flies by the seat of their pants when it comes to money. So you can ask my mom, hey, mama, let's go out to lunch. She doesn't care where. She doesn't care how much it costs. She's just ready to go because she's all about the relationship. So what we found was with these 5 money personalities is that, especially as a couple working together, it affects our daily, but it sure affects our businesses as well. Because what would happen was, Bethany would say, hey, I have this great idea and blah, blah, blah. And as a security seeker, I'm like, secondary security seeker, I'm thinking, well, how are we going to pay for that? How does that fit into this?
What's the plan?
What's the plan? Give me a plan. Don't give me this 30,000-foot view. Give me the 10-foot view of how this works. And so what we found in our own relationship was I would shoot her down a lot. And if I didn't do it verbally, my face shot it down. So
that's a terrible idea, but it's because you're thinking about.
But I have to process that. So what she did, and we've learned over the last 15 years with our money personalities, is that if she has an idea, she doesn't hit me with it, especially not after 9 o'clock, but at night. But she'll hit me and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And that's her go-to word for me. You do the research and you see if you think this is a good idea. And then that gives me a day to kind of put it together, and I'll come back and say, hey, babe, I think these are some of the things that might be red lights. And sometimes I come back and say, genius, let's do it. How much do we need to put into that project?
So it's really understanding where your differences are. So primarily, our primary money personalities are exactly the same. We're both spenders. So we both love to spend money on ourselves. We love to spend money on others. That is...
And experiences or whatever it might be. Yeah,
exactly. But secondarily, we're opposite. So
what's your secondary?
So I'm secondary risk taker, and Scott is secondary security seeker.
Perfect balance.
Those just totally balance each other out. But if you don't identify it, then what happens is you clash over it. And then after a while, it's really interesting, especially risk takers stop sharing their ideas. And they start sharing their ideas with other people and not their spouse. And that's what we found, is that if you're not careful, that's how the separation can start, because one is so no. Savers and security seekers are oftentimes no people. They just, no, we're not doing that. And what happens to the spender and risk taker is they just kind of start hibernating and sharing their ideas with other people, and that's not good. So in order to bring yourself together, you have to understand why you're together, because opposites attract, but then don't attack the differences and just accept them and see the good in them. Like, I see so much good in security seekers now. I didn't used to, but I do now. And now I find myself more of a planner than I've ever been.
Or more cautious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've always been a planner, but in terms of just wanting to make sure that the idea is really going to make it. And then I find Scott is more of a risk taker. Let's do it. Why not? Kind of attitude. So it's neat. It is
the
really
longer
cool.
you're married, right? You start to kind of like, hey, what have we got to lose? Like you just start to shift.
And I think trust gets built too.
True.
Like I think for me, the reason she thinks I'm so much more of a risk taker now is because for 25 years, I mean, she's hit most of that right. When she gets not all, we've had a couple epic fails, but if you're either learning or you're winning. And sometimes learning is more important than winning. And we've had some circumstances where we've been in a situation where, we went for it and I was 100% into it. And it was just like, it was a bad move, but you have to have those because if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have those, you're really not an entrepreneur.
Yeah. You're not trying things. You're not
working hard enough.
I love that learning or winning. You're either learning or you're winning. And so you really need to have that learn attitude in order to be able to get the wins. And it also makes it a lot easier when you do fail. You'd say, that was a learning opportunity. It just emotionally makes you feel better.
Well, and I mean, you feel sick about sometimes the money you lost on something. Yeah. But when you also like average out the lifetime of an entrepreneur, you look at the money that's lost, but it's kind of like this, where it's like a dip and then you go up a little bit and it's a little dip and it's like, okay, but over the lifetime, you've still come out way ahead because of all the businesses and the profitability, but you wouldn't have learned to make your next business better if you didn't have that learning moment. So it's like, we've lost money on deals too. Absolutely. I mean, we've all made stupid choices. We're like, okay, that wasn't the best thing we could have done, but we were both in agreement about it. Right. So neither one of us are mad at each other because we said, oh, well, we were in agreement about that decision.
That's right.
It's a bummer that didn't work out and we lost money, maybe a lot of money. And then we're like, okay, back to the drawing board. Let's recover and like do it better next time.
Well, and I think the recovery, I think that is a good point too, I've noticed in our lives and in our business and working together, and even though now we're in totally different industries, we recover so much quicker when we do have a whoops. Whether it's our businesses or personally, because we just look at each other and go, hey, whoops, well, yeah, that's a bummer. Let's change. Let's move on. Let's keep pushing. And I think that comes with experience in life too, is that you don't get hung up when you have a failure. I feel like when I was younger and we were brand new in business and we have failures, I'd just be like, oh.
Devastating. It was devastating.
Like, 2 months later, I'm coming out of it. Now it's like 2 hours later, whoops.
Yes.
We're moving on. And so I think that's part of the beauty of being an entrepreneur for 25 years, actually it's probably closer to 27 now. Right. But you recover faster.
Yep, it's true. And you realize, okay, time is money. And the longer time I sit in this failure, actually I'm losing money. That's so exactly I need to learn that lesson, kind of be like, well, that was really unfortunate. What can we do next time to avoid that from happening again?
Whoopsie daisy.
And so then, and sometimes it is just being like, just, you can be mad, but put a time on it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you can be frustrated and disappointed. All those emotions are very real. But there's often times where Jordan's like, we'll talk and say, that was so frustrating. We say, but by tomorrow, we're going to be done with this. Like we're not going to keep living in what we found out today. And and sometimes even shorter than a day. But it, like you said, sometimes it's a 2-hour recovery. It's like, okay, in 2 hours from now, we're closing this up. And we do things like, we're not going to talk about this again. We're not going to keep looking in the past. We got the forward to still go towards. And so, it's having those conversations of even saying, let's be mad for 2 hours. Let's go to lunch and just be so mad. And then after that lunch, we literally physically close things up. And we do that around here at my business too. We have a hard day or something happened, or we did a whole customer service situation and we made it amazing for them and they still aren't happy and you just did everything you could. And we just, okay, we're going to close this up because it's literally stealing our energy. And we cannot do more until we close this up. And so we'll say 1, 2, 3. We all physically clap our hands. Some people are smashing their hands. Some people are just like, but we close it up and we say, okay, we learned something there. Let's go forward now. And I mean, I think it's really good to give a time limit, like you said, because otherwise, it could be 2 months. And I see entrepreneurs sit in the remorse of 2 months, and you just are like, what could you have done with those 2 months? Right. So I love that seasonedness about you guys. Just saying, okay, now it's kind of like laughable. Like even they think about that proverb. It's like you can laugh. Women can laugh at their future. They can laugh at the joy of like what's to come, because it's like, well, it's not so bad. That happened. Let's go forward. You know, like, so I love that approach that you guys give. Any other money couple advice before we kind of go into just working together?
I would say really just know your differences, accept them, and use them to your advantage. And don't beat your spouse up. I mean, it really give your spouse the freedom to be who they are, even when it comes to money. And there'll be a lot more joy inside of your relationship. Totally.
I love that. Good. That's good advice. Okay. So working together, I want to start by just saying when Jordan and I were newlyweds, and that's when I, like I said, first remember meeting you, you were the only couple I could think of at that time that it was like both of them work, parenting, working mom. I knew very few of them that were CEOs of their companies, running a team, a staff, and trying to also raise a family. And that was like, to me, such a special time in life because you were who I looked towards. It was like, oh, the Palmers, you know what I'm saying? And people ask us like, how do you do it? Because they don't know a lot of working moms, or maybe I should even put it this way. They own a business and they're a working mom. That's another level of pressure because, you know, the sales is on you, the team's on you. So think about all those early years and you guys doing it while raising boys. What are some of the things you're like, oh, I wish somebody would have told me?
Well, one of the things that we really work on, and we have ever since we were married, and we weren't as good at it when we first were married, but we're better now, and that is being intentional. And really looking at the different parts of our marriage, parts of our life, whether it's faith, family, fun, work, health. I mean, whatever that category is, being intentional with it. And we wanted to be really intentional with our kids and our work. That was really important to us. So we made, and we talked, and we tried to figure it out, like, how are we going to raise our children in the best way? And for us, the best way was to reduce the amount of time we worked and split our hours watching our kids. So I would work from 6 to noon. And I would work my tail end off, almost like right before you go on a trip. And you know how hard you work? You got to get everything closed up and ready to go before a trip. I worked like that every day from 6 in the morning till 12. And then Scott, and then it was my turn to be with the kids. So Scott was with the kids in the morning. And then Scott worked from 12 to 6, and he worked the same way. And so it allowed us to be able to both raise our children. That wasn't the intentionality that we did. There were some people like, you can do it. And there's some people like, that's never going to work. You're used to working, 10, 11 hours. How is that ever going to work? But you know what? If you're intentional and really work together, you can do whatever you want. And it's really nice being entrepreneurs because we did have the flexibility to be able to do that. But we had to make a decision because it was challenging and hard to fit an 10, 11-hour work day in 6 hours, but we did it. And we look back and we're so glad we did. So
you never really know what you can accomplish until you push it. And that was our big thing. When we wrote a total, you said 3 books. I thought we wrote 4 for some reason, but
yes,
in my head, because
right.
we wrote the children's book.
The children's book.
So actually wrote 4 books, yes. But we weren't writing those like on a Saturday afternoon during football practice. We were writing those from 4 to 6 in the morning.
Before your shift.
Before the shift happened. And so I think you have to, and it goes back to that intentionality, is just say, hey, this is important to us. And that's one of the things that I think is super important for couples, especially working together, is saying, what is the most important thing to us? And then get rid of all the naysayers. Get rid of all those people in your life that look at you judgmentally. I mean, I was a stay-at-home dad before that was cool. I mean, I was the guy in the playground and all the moms were looking at me like, you bum, go get a job. And I'm like, well, actually I have a job and I work 2 hours before your eyes were even open. But I think the reality is that we figured out what was going to work for us. Some people thought we were crazy. My kids were traveling with us all over the country, to New York when we were doing all of our media, to all these conferences we speak at. We just brought them. And was it convenient? No. But those little guys learned how to sit in the front row for an hour and a half conference, which we were speaking at, dead still. No phone, no books, just engage. And that's how we were intentional even with that. And then we'd get done with those conferences, and if there was an amusement park in that city, we were there. If there was some cool kids museum, we were there. So we worked crazy hours, just at different times. And we were just intentional with our time with the boys, and we dragged them all over the country. And some people would say, well, you know, you didn't do this right or you didn't do that right. And they probably had some valid points, but for us, it was awesome. And for us, it was how we wanted to raise our kids. And I think they've turned out pretty amazing.
Actually, and I can say as an outsider, your boys are really amazing. They're great with people. They're considerate of others. They're super fun to be around. They're comfortable in their own skin. They're just like the most lovable guys, and they're handsome as all get out. Imagine these tall, big football players. I mean, they're just a light. They just have a brightness about them when they talk and they're with you, and you can just see that there's something special about them. So I think that they have been brought into your world instead of you going into their world. Like, you brought them right into your world,
right.
And
Absolutely.
they saw all the opportunities they could have
Yes.
with hard work. And I think that's what's cool is like now they're working their butts off, right, for football. But I'm saying is like they saw parents working hard, and they're like, this is what it could be like if I work hard too.
Absolutely.
And being at the Air Force Academy is really, really challenging because you have the military side, you have all the study side, and then you have the football side. And so there were many a time, and every once in a while, even now with our younger one, you know, they just like, I just don't know if this is for me. This is so hard, da 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 da. And we just say, you know you can do it if you want to do it. You don't have to do it, but we know you can. And but that's internal grit is what they need, and they experience that with seeing all the ups and downs that we always brought our kids into our ups and downs. When I had stage 3 breast cancer, we brought them right in there, and we brought them to treatments. We didn't hide any of it. Me losing my hair, all of that, we did not hide any of it. And I think that they need to see, and we need to not protect our kids from every single thing if it's hard, which I'm seeing so often now as of late. And you know what? That's what makes you a tough person. That is what gives you grit, going through hard times. If we protect our kids from all these hard times, they won't know how to survive them when they do come along, because we all know life is hard. Mm-hmm. It's not always easy, but they won't have that grit if we don't let them fall, if we don't let them see hard times, if we don't let them see the challenges that we would have in a travel situation. You know, we missed our plane or whatever it would be.
Right.
Just bring them right in. And so we're glad in retrospect now that we did. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Have they had their challenges? Yes, and they continue to. But as we look back, we're not sorry that we involved them.
Yeah, can you think of a time specifically? I know Health Journey was one, but can you think of a time maybe that you went through a hard time as a business, or there was like a challenge in whether it could have been with staff or it could have been even with finances, whatever it might be, a challenge within your business that you pulled back the curtain and talked about that at the dinner table, or you said, hey, this is what we're going through right now, and mom and dad are having a couple hard weeks because this is what's happening at work?
Well, I'll answer one of those. There was a time when we had to get a loan on our home, a second on our home, to pay salary to people. It was just a really, really rough time, and that was rough. That was rough on us. It was just really challenging, but we brought them right in. And we told them, we said, you know what, mom and dad are having a challenging time paying our employees, but we feel like it's more important to pay our employees right now than pay us. And that will turn around sometime, but that's sometimes the price you pay for being an entrepreneur. We did not hide them, shelter them from those kind of
those
things.
conversations.
No, not at all.
I mean, that's amazing, because I think people could look at both of our lives and say, oh, it must be so easy and it must be so nice. And look, you know, they have this nice thing or whatever, but there has been so many bumps in the road to have the type of scenario we have now, where we can send our kids to college, or we can, pay to send them to a sports camp or whatever. That didn't come without a fight.
Right.
Like the house that we own didn't come without a fight, right? Like there was effort made to choices, sacrifices, really delayed gratification sacrifices for the hope that one day, you'd have a house, or the hope that one day you'd have these opportunities to send your kid to a fun camp or whatever. But I think it's good for people to know the struggle is real too. And then, like you're saying, bring your kids into the struggle.
Yep,
Absolutely. One of the things that I think is super important as an entrepreneur is you've probably got a pretty good chance of your kid being an entrepreneur, because they have been brought into the highs and lows. I mean, hey guys, we were going to do this weekend, but We just had to take a second on our house to pay our employees. So we're probably not going to do that this weekend. So it gives them an aspect. But I even think like recently I went through a Department of Regulatory Agency audit. And it's called a rapid response audit, where they give you 2 weeks and you just have to
provide everything.
And I mean, I think I did probably 160 hours work on that in just 2 weeks. Cool thing was, it was right during football season. And usually on the weekends I'm around and I'm hanging out. I was just gone. I made it to the games, but other than that, I was at my office. And the guys were like, well, where's Dad? And my cadets that hang out at our house like, where's Mr. Palmer? Well, he's at the office doing what he has to do. And so they came to me just to check in. Are you losing your mind? I'm like, yeah, I am. So get out. But
I know.
You know,
I know.
Love ya. Bye-bye. But that's even now as you know, a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old, they see that we still have to work. We still have to fight, just like you said. And
hustle.
And if, you know, if you're not hustling, you're getting out hustled. And especially when something just gets thrown in your lap, you just have to be able to say, this is part of being a business owner. And I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to see what I'm doing right. I'm going to see what I'm doing wrong, which I got both of those feedbacks from Dora. But the reality is they still get to see that at the age of 52, Dad still has those 2 weeks where he just has to grind like crazy. And so you have the experience that we had when they were a little younger, but it's still an experience that they have. And you'll notice that with your boys and your baby girl too, that even though things are great and business is solid, you do go through highs and lows, and keep them exposed even when they're adults, because they can kind of check in on you. And they did. They text me and say, hey, are you doing all right? Do you need anything? But they knew that it was a pretty tough, it turned into a month, but a pretty tough 2 weeks getting that ready. But they got to join it and see that, hey, man, this is just part of the deal. This is just part of the grind, because this is just what entrepreneurs do.
And I think, too, there's seasons in life, you know, and there's seasons when you have to be at the office 24/7 to be able to get something done. And then there's seasons that it isn't. I remember when our kids were really little and I was in the baby stage. I'm not a big baby person, and all the crying and all the this and all that. And I felt like that season was going to last forever, forever.
I know.
But it didn't. And here we are now. And so it's just a good reminder that there's a seasons for everything. See, and even you can take a 2-hour season to be mad about something, or a day season to be mad about something, but it's a season and it will be done and it will be over. And there is light at the end of the tunnel, especially when you're going through the tough times.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so Scott and Bethany, you guys had a pretty awesome career. You had businesses that were going great, and then you just decided one day, I'd like to hear how this journey came about to not do that anymore. You said no. You said, I think I want to change, which is very inspiring, I want to say, to couples that are thinking maybe it's too late to start their dream career, or too late to start that business, or maybe they're like, you know, I already had kids, like, can I even begin? Yes, you can. I want to just remind everyone, yes, you can, but tell them why they can, and your story of what, like, you just looked up one day and were like, you know what? I don't like this anymore.
Well, this is what happened.
Okay. Tell me what happened.
We were both in the financial advising world. I had run a record-keeping company that did 401ks and 403bs. Scott worked a lot with individual clients. We were enjoying it, but I was like, I don't know if I want to do this forever. And so we had the hobby of the money couple, writing all the books and stuff, and it was a lot of fun, but it wasn't necessarily this thriving business. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to go and focus 100% of our time on the money couple kinds of activities, all the different activities that we do, speaking, TV, radio, all of that. And so I said, I'm going to give it 3 years and see how far I can take it with Scott, but it's going to be Scott's secondary thing that he does. It's
but you'll primary. Be the...
Yeah. And I gave him my all. I did everything that I could to make it, but it just wasn't getting to the point that I felt that it needed to be, and that it could be, and that maybe I wasn't the right person for that. All along, about 10 years ago, I had remodeled my home, and I loved it. I did it with an interior designer. I loved every minute of it. I was right there. I was like, and I remember thinking, I want to do what she does. And it was just always in the back of my mind. Well, after 3 years of The Money Couple, I just said to Scott, you know what, in this next kind of last life stage of work, I'm really asking myself, is this what I want to do? And it wasn't. And so we decided together collectively that we were going to go out and look and see if someone would buy The Money Couple. I'm like, there's got to be another couple out there that, you know, has passion for couples and finances. It's got to be out there. So we took about 6-8 months and we found a couple down in Texas and they purchased it from us. And then that gave me the freedom to go and do what I want to do. And that was be an interior designer and really help people design fabulous spaces, fabulous homes, fabulous offices. And so that's what I do. So I went back to school for a year.
Which is amazing. Because can I ask you, how old were you when you're like, I'm going to go back to school?
54.
54 when you went back to school?
So it was me and all the little kiddos in college. And and then we went, and then I went and
I love this story so much. Okay.
Well, and I knew I didn't necessarily need to get the degree, but there was something, because it was a totally other side of my brain. I mean, finances and relationships and interior design. I mean, you really can't get much different than that. And so I really felt like there was some core courses that I needed to take, you know, all the AutoCAD and all the computer side of it and just understanding the fundamentals. And so I was a full-time student for a year. And I really enjoyed it.
Was it so fun?
It was so fun. I'm serious. I was with all these 22-year-olds, you know, just
they're like inviting her out, and Scott's like, no, you have to come home.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't
Dinner's
have time
ready,
for our
babe.
study
Come
session.
home.
Yeah. And so I loved it. But then after a year, I knew I had had enough, and I took all my business experience and was able to apply that to the interior design. One of the neat things, especially for, I'm sure, many of your listeners, whether you build a bridal store or whatever business it is, there's some core fundamentals that you have to do to build a successful business. And so again, it doesn't matter if it's finances, interior design, bridal industry, doesn't matter. So I was able to take all that business experience and then apply it to the interior design.
You were way ahead of your competitors at that point. Yeah.
It did catapult me. And then also to have the support of Scott. I mean, he was 100% supportive. I mean, he was just like, do it. Let's
do
go.
your dream.
Yeah, do your dream. And I just love it so
That's
much.
such a gift, because I love what you said though. Back earlier you said, but now you trust. You're like, I've seen her rock it.
Yeah, I knew she was gonna kill it. I mean, I did. And she was gracious enough to me. The financial planning firm that we had, where we did all the bookkeeping and then we managed a lot of money. I needed to step away from that. So we had a conversation and I was like, I just kind of want to go do my own thing. I just want to throw my shingle up and just see what I can do. And so I stepped out about 3 years before she even stepped out of the family-run business and just started my practice from zero. I mean, it was crazy. I remember sitting up at the desk in the loft in our house, and I'm literally in a pair of boxers and a T-shirt and saying, I'm making no money. What have I done?
I'm a loser.
And I am a loser. I know. I called her and said, I think
he's the playground dad. He's the playground.
They might have been right. The mean ladies at the playground might have been right.
It's like a full circle moment. You're like,
what have I done?
The playground moms, they were right.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking.
No, I mean, you definitely feel like that. And then took me, and then Beth she was great, because she's like, okay, like if you could have any client, what would that look like? And I'm like, you know what? I love older people. Like, I love hanging around and hearing about their life stories. I love hearing about their parents serving in World War II. I love reading the books they did. And she's like, well, then go find them. And that's what I did. I only work with 55 people, 55 and older. And my average age of my client is 64. And so that, to me, I've been able to build a practice with people that I love. I know everything about my clients. I know their grandkids. I know their birthdays. They tell me stuff that I probably shouldn't even know, but I love my clients so much.
Well, and they love that. That's why they trust you with their money.
Yeah, and I started it when I was 47. I mean, that's when I decided, hey, I've got all the stuff to do it. I just have to believe in myself to do it. And so I stepped away from a family practice. I stepped away from a paycheck and just started from zero. and the Lord's totally blessed it, but he's not even blessing financially. He's blessed me with the greatest clients. I never, maybe every once in a while, hardly ever wake up in the morning and go, I have to go to the office. I wake up and I'm like, I get to go to the office and I get to help my people, and I get to hear about this grandkids football game, and I get to hear about the band concert. I mean, it's just, for me, it's given me a new lease on life. And I don't think we'll ever stop doing what we do in some form, or at least being entrepreneurial. But we were both midlife changers.
Yeah, but I was going to say, what I love
about
about that is like you take time, it seems like pretty regularly, to assess, do I enjoy what my day brings?
Yeah.
And of course, every job, every career is going to have elements that you have to grind.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to paint this picture of like, you don't have to grind and you get to have fun all the time. No, but you should look at that like 80-20 rule, or even 60-40 rule. Is 60% of the time I'm looking forward to going to the office?
Yep.
Is 60% of the time I feel like I'm bringing value to the world? Because if I am, then like, let's go, you know?
Yep.
But if not, I love how you guys stop and assess. And even at 47 or 54 or whatever it may be, you've said, I don't really want that anymore. I want something different, and not being scared to, yes, I'm sure you were scared at moments, but also I think you had more faith than you had fear.
Right.
And so you're like, I have more faith in what I can bring than what I'm afraid of what could possibly happen.
Absolutely.
And that's a wisdom that younger people need to gravitate towards. And that's a real gift you bring to us.
Well, and I think, we all have regrets in our life, but toxic regrets are a whole nother level of when you let fear overshadow the decision. And you have a toxic regret. I mean, I would have had a toxic regret if I wouldn't have gone for the interior design. I know I would have, and I don't, and that's the reason. And we don't have toxic regrets, because even the money couple was like, okay, let's do it. Let's go for it. I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it. And so we don't have those toxic regrets. And I think you have to be intentional and just say, what is my future going to look like if I don't do this? Is it going to be no big deal? Oh, well, you just decide not to do it. Or, gosh, that really was a passion. That is really something that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And be glad that you did.
Yeah.
That helps.
And now it seems like you guys are kind of in a happy state. Like your kids are out of the house.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Although they come home on the weekends, right?
The weekends are always a fiasco.
Yeah, we do.
But we love it.
We love
I
it.
know.
We really
It's
do.
really
We love
amazing.
those boys.
So, but that you can plan ahead for when they're coming. This isn't
Absolutely.
like truly everyone's at home parenting and they have a crisis. So I love that. So this is kind of a fun season, still working, like you said, side by side, but in completely different businesses, and really enjoying, it sounds like, your clients and taking the lessons you've learned from the previous businesses and applying it. One last question I really had, if it comes to mind, a thought on somebody's looking to sell their business. You guys have sold multiple. I mean, that's not normal. Usually people do one business their whole life and then they're like, I'm retiring, I got to sell my business. But I love that you're almost like entrepreneurial flippers.
Well, one of the things that's really important when you sell a business is partner with someone who knows what they're doing. Partner with someone who knows how to sell a business. I don't know how to sell a business necessarily, but partner with somebody who does.
And who would that be? Like a lawyer, a realtor?
No, it'd be a person who that's what they do, is they sell businesses. You have to find somebody who really understands your industry, who is really well connected to your industry, and seek their wisdom in doing that. And then what that does is that just frees you up to just be there to sell the passion of what you had for your business. You don't have to worry about all of the sales side of it necessarily. You just have to worry about and think about and be intentional about why this business is a valuable business. Make sure you get all your finances locked up and very clear, very how you make your money, where your money comes from, what the potential is for the person. But in our case, we had counsel, and in all three of those situations, they told us exactly what had, every I that needed to be dotted and every T that needed to be crossed before we even went out to market. You don't want to go out there without having everything all lined up and ready to go, all the finances in order.
And I'm sure that's like the way they
that
get
takes a long time.
Yes. And then the way they get compensated for their expertise is the sale.
Exactly.
Like
That's
a percentage
exactly
of the sales.
Yeah, it's going to be a 15% to 10%, which is worth it. Every industry has someone that sells businesses in that industry. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
And we always talk about you begin with the end in mind. And so for me, when I started my business about 6 years ago, I knew what I wanted to sell it for. So what we did was we figured out, so how does a business need to look for me to sell it for what I think it's worth? So begin with the end in mind. And those numbers will come into place, but that's what we're always looking at. Do we want to service our clients? Absolutely. Do I love my clients? Absolutely. Do I know what I need to do to be able to sell my business for X because that's part of our long-term plan? Absolutely. Begin with the end in mind. Know what you want to sell it for, and then you will just come up with a plan to make that happen. And then there are people out there in every industry that sell businesses, and they're going to take a 10 or 15% cut. Who cares? That's part of our internal planning is I want to sell it for this much, less my 10 or 15%.
Yeah. So you just plan with the overall picture.
Yep. Begin with the end in mind. That's how every business is successful in the end.
And I think that in any industry, finding people who are good at what you want to have happen and surrounding yourself with those people, whether it's coaching in the bridal side, I know that I got a coach, an interior design coach.
I have a coach.
And Scott has a coach. And so it's just to be able to get that expertise in and surround yourself with people who know and have what you would like. It's the best and fastest way to get there versus trying to do everything yourself and figure everything out. When the age that I started my business in, knowing nothing about interior design, I didn't have 3 years to just make all these mistakes and figure it all out. I needed to get and partner with someone, and I partnered with my interior design coach who was just invaluable, saved me so much time because I just could learn from her mistakes instead of doing them myself.
It's a speed track. Like when
Absolutely.
you pay for someone, and I tell people that too, that I work with, it's like, okay, I've done this for 16 years. If you want to learn all of those things in one, this is how you pay for that.
It's huge. It's such a huge, I love the fact that you guys are doing that because I've been in this industry my whole life. I started right out of college. And I hit my kind of 5-year, a lot of us kind of hit this 5-year weird plateau. I hit that 5-year plateau and I was like, what am I doing? I need to go get a coach. I need someone to coach me how to take my business to the next level because I'm never going to sell this for what I want, doing what I'm doing. So I went out and got a coach. It's the best thing I ever did about a year ago. We speak every 2 weeks and she's not even in my industry, but she's been able to just kind of get me, I think you're thinking about that wrong. What about this? And I'm like, genius, because I needed that perspective. So coaching, if you look at the majority of really successful entrepreneurs, they've either had a coach or they're lying about not having a coach.
Right. And just put it in your budget.
It's just going to say it's an investment.
It's an expense.
It's an investment.
It is.
That's right.
It's a great expense.
And the return is usually way more than the
100-fold.
investment. So just getting the mindset correct on it. It's not an expense where it's just gone. You're going to multiply because of the money you spent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I loved it. Okay, well let's. I know we could talk all day. I mean,
so fun.
and I'm like, I should bring. If I brought Jordan up here, he's helping today produce the show. But if I brought, we could just keep going forever. But what I'd like to do is bring out your favorite drink. So Scott and Bethany have different favorite drinks.
Yes.
Okay, what are your favorite drinks?
I love Diet Pepsi.
Diet Pepsi.
It's my favorite.
Okay, I'm surprised because you guys seem like very healthy people, and this seems
It's
like
my vice.
Okay, and
It is her vice.
And you really, water's your favorite? Is this
Well,
like?
it's my favorite until 6 o'clock at night.
And then
And then
you
it might shift to a scotch, maybe.
you look like you guys are Scottish, so we'll just say you have to. You just have to.
Actually, I have no Scottish, but you know what? They make an amazing scotch.
Yes.
So
Oh, I love it. Okay, well we're gonna get our drinks out, and I'm gonna break my no soda. I don't ever drink soda.
Yeah, well,
It's been
not
like
great
20
for you.
years since I've had soda, but I'm gonna break it today
I
for Bethany to do a cheers. Let's do a cheers.
I
Thanks for this Diet
thank you
Pepsi.
so much for having us.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
that's
this is
amazing.
joy.
I'm gonna take my little sip.
Oh,
What do you think? How'd it taste?
Like I remember it.
Really good.
Very syrupy, but it's so good. Well, you guys, this was such a fun episode. What I'd like you to do is put a comment below on something that stood out to you. Definitely follow, like our episode, and then subscribe, because we would love more subscribers that want to join us on our adventure to learn how to live a life worth celebrating. So again, thanks, Scott and Bethany Palmer. I hope you guys have an awesome day. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow The Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.